Hey guys, I hope all is well with everyone wherever and whenever you're watching this. This video is going to be about sightings, encounters, and just various other creepy stuff that I've read about. So this is all going to be a compilation of all kinds of stuff, hopefully. So if that's your deal, then pull up a stump with me and let's get into it. Thank you for watching. So to start off, I figured I'd dive into some more Bigfoot sightings. The first one I have for you is from Pennsylvania in Susquehanna County. This encounter took place in the winter of 2007 on Route 706 west of Montrose in the township of Jessup. This happened to take place on a property with dense woods and a mountain behind the property. The deer population here is quite high as well. In December of 2007, the witness and her husband were at their house. They have two dogs that were sitting on the couch with the husband when he was reading a newspaper. The witness came into the living room and said she was leaning over her husband to tell him something, and said that something caught her eye in her peripheral vision. She then saw two red spots at the top of her blinds. The witness turned to get a better look and noticed that they were actually very large eyes that were the size of golf balls and approximately 4 inches apart. She assumed the eyes were not glowing red but simply reflecting the light from the living room. There were wrinkles beneath the eyes as they were set deep into the face. The possible Bigfoot and the witness stared at each other for a good 3 to 5 minutes before it turned its head and walked away. She said that she didn't feel scared, but more astonished as to what she was seeing. She notes that their mobile home is 14 feet high and 17 feet long. She never went out to investigate what she saw, as she figured that it was better to let whatever it was just kind of continue on its way. It's also interesting to note that her dogs did not react to the presence at all. It's also noted that 2 to 3 years prior, she and her husband had heard some loud vocalizations up on the mountain behind the property. Those sounds happened to be in the summer around the afternoon and into the evening. The sounds that were described were very loud screeches and screaming that gave her a very eerie feeling. The couple sold their property in the February following the encounter in the window. It's not noted if this was because of the encounter or if they were intending to sell anyways. So, what do you think about that one? Do you think it was a Bigfoot or do you think it was something else? Let me know what you think down in the comments. This next one takes place in the summer of 2004, specifically late July in New Mexico in Otero County. Around 11 p.m. of that night, the witness said his sister-in-law ran into his mother-in-law's house from the outside and said that she saw something very tall walking on the trail below the house. She said that it was walking back and forth on the trail before it came up to the house and stood at the corner, looking at them sitting there. And that's when her and her friends ran inside and told the witness. So he says that he went around outside and searched around but found nothing. So they all went back into her room after that. The witness and his girlfriend stayed in the living room and watched TV. At some point a loud noise was heard in the dining room and the witness asked what was that. His girlfriend said that she wasn't sure, so they jumped up to go see. Some of the girls came out to see what the noise was as well. It was like somebody was throwing stuff around the room. And when the witness got into the dining room, there was a large hand reaching in through the window. It reached across the table by the window and pulled out a bowl that had some food in it. They all got scared and screamed and called the conservation office. Nothing else happened after that night. The witness also notes that this creature has been hanging around a nearby town, Mescalero, for about 2 to 3 years now. About 2 years prior to his experience, a Bigfoot followed his brother-in-law home from a friend's house at around midnight. His brother-in-law saw it down the road about 150 yards away. He got scared and ran home. But when he got to the door and started pounding on it, he didn't know that it had followed him. Just before the door opened, he looked behind him and saw that the Bigfoot was standing about 10 feet away from him. He ran in the house and would not go back outside. The Bigfoot supposedly left 5 minutes after. Another sighting by the same witness at the house said that a year prior to that one, his mother-in-law went out to get her clothes off the clothesline. There was snow on the ground and it was about 8 a.m. She saw 2 sets of tracks, a very large set and a smaller set, like it had a smaller one with it. The tracks went between the house and the clothesline. Some of her clothes were now on the ground. The tracks went down to the trees below her house. And the witness says that he lives in a trailer home on the highway now. The closest house is a mile away. One time he could hear screams in the canyon near where he lives. One night him and his girlfriend were there without any power and no dogs. They were going to bed and they heard a sound like a rumble on the side of the house. It was like somebody bumped the trailer with a car. It only happened just the once, and he just figured that it was another Bigfoot because it seems to be common around there. This next one comes to us from my home province here in Canada. I know the witness personally, and they agreed to let me include this story under the premise that I don't say exactly where they live and I change their name. So for this, the witness's name is Drew. Drew lives in a pretty rural part of central New Brunswick in Canada. This encounter took place in the summer, he assumes late July into August, sometime between the years of 1996 and 1998, so that would make him between the ages of 11 and 13 years old. The landscape in this area is very hilly and is densely forested, with that house being the last house for about 10 kilometers before there's another small settlement. So it was a very hot and dry week with very high humidity. He was in the front yard riding his bike around, going behind the house and back to the front yard again. He had been doing this for quite a while before something caught his eye across the road in the dense forest. He stopped his bike and looked across the road for what caught his eye. Slowly, a figure peeked out from behind the branches. The figure was approximately 7 feet tall, with dark, somewhat copper-colored fur and large eyes. The two stared at each other for what seemed like forever, before it drew a heavy sigh and walked deeper into the woods. Drew says that it looked somewhat like it was dehydrated. In the following weeks, Drew's father commented on a foul odor around his workshop. They never had any experiences after this. So for this next segment, I figured I would do some creepy stories that I had found when I was looking for stuff to do a video about. So let's jump into those. My great aunt told me this story, and others in the family had corroborated this before. It's not quite horror, but it's still really damn weird. So my great uncle lost his leg somehow, and as a replacement he gets a wooden leg. He buried his actual leg in the backyard, wrapped in a blanket or two inside of a wooden box. He has a good sense of humor about it, uses the wooden leg to freak out the kids that would come over. But one day his leg starts itching. The one that's missing, too. Constant itching, like phantom limb stuff. He tries to deal with it in various ways, but nothing works. So there's a few weeks of this, and it's so itchy, and he's like, holy shit, make it stop. He finally exhausts all other ideas of making it stop. He can't take it anymore. He says, screw it, I'm digging it up. So he digs up his old leg. The box had rotted through. The leg is covered in ants. So he goes out and grabs the hose and blasts all the ants off the decaying leg. After this, the itching stops. He reburies his leg, this time sealed much better, and it never itches again. It never even bothers him again. So somehow the ants caused an itching sensation on a severed leg. So I grew up pretty poor, so I had to share a room with my big sister. And the room is really tiny, so we're really kinda going back and forth at having each other's stuff in our zones. She gets this huge plant leaf thing from IKEA with her allowance that she saved up. She hangs it on the wall between our beds as kind of like a partition in the room. The first night it's up, I'm staring up at it from the bed. It's sort of at an angle, so I'm looking partially underneath of it, if that makes any sense. It makes this really weird shadow in the ceiling, and it looks like somebody's looking over the edge of it. It freaked me out really bad, but I didn't say anything. I probably would have just gotten laughed at. Every night for like 6 months I look up at this thing and think how weird the shadow is. I can't figure out what it is. There's seemingly no cause for it. One night I'm looking at it and I can almost convince myself I can see eyes. Almost like the reflection of animal eyes have, but way duller. I'm actually starting to get really freaked out by it. Suddenly, I hear from my sister's bed, "You see it too, right?" Both of us flip our shit, get up and turn on the light, and of course there's nothing there. We take the leaf down and try to forget about it. It turns out she'd been seeing it for months just like I had, always in the same spot, always looking down at me. So I'm an old lad, and this happened in 1989, back when I was just a kid. It's one of the last days before winter break, so school eventually lets out. It feels like forever, but it begins to snow, and it never snows here in Texas. Everyone's excited. Me and a bunch of other kids who usually walk home together, we decide to take a shortcut through a field. None of us have ever actually seen snow in real life. We're all walking with our heads tilted back, catching snowflakes with our tongues, and we're all laughing and just having a good time. Then one of the kids yells out, "Hey!" We all look at him and says, "Someone just grabbed me." We all laugh at him. There's nobody around us, like what is he even talking about? So we keep going, still catching snowflakes on our tongues, and we're all just kind of forget about it and we're laughing again. But the same kid makes a really panicked noise, and then he takes off running. For some reason we all take off after him. I'm not sure about the others, but it was the panic sound that he made. It's kind of scared the shit out of me. I'm nervously running after the kid, but he's fast, and way ahead of us now. We hear him yell, "Let me go!" But there's nobody anywhere near him. We can't see anybody. But he sounds like he's freaking out. And then I see him trip, and he falls really unnaturally. He slips over to his right and into a bayou that runs through the field. Holy shit. We all run towards where he fell, and he's down at the bottom, not moving. Blood starts pooling around his head, and we all just flip out. We race home and tell our parents what happened, and they go back, but the kid didn't make it. For years, all I remembered was the sight of this kid falling into the bayou, but later I remembered how weird he was acting before. Like I said, I'm pretty old, but by the way he yelled, "Let go of me," it was the most panicked noise I've ever heard to this day. So this was a really weird thing that happened to me in my last semester of college. My friend convinced me to take a graduate level math class with him, and we BS with the professor and we both get approved for it. So we show up early on the first day, just to kind of get a feel for the place and see what we're dealing with. The graduate classes were taught in this really crappy looking converted dorm building. The classrooms are really long but very narrow as a result of this. We walk into the classroom to find out that we're not the first ones there. There's this girl sitting there in one of the back seats in very dated clothes. She looks like she was pulled straight out of the 70s. I get up to go to the bathroom and my friend is checking out the course syllabus on his laptop. When I get back, the girl is gone. My friend didn't hear her leave, and she would have had to walk right by him to exit the room. The professor and other students show up and she's not with them either. I kept an eye out, but I never saw that girl anywhere else on campus after that day. Anytime I was in that building after that, or when I went to class or office hours, I almost had a really weird feeling of being watched. The building always gave me chills after that. And after I did some asking around, it turns out that when it was living quarters, there were unfortunately a few suicides there. And on that note, I will say that if you are ever feeling like you're having suicidal thoughts, if you're thinking of ending your life, if you're thinking just things are beyond hope and that you want to die, then just know that help is available. You can get help. You never know how good tomorrow could be, as long as you're there to see it. And I'm sure that someone somewhere out there would be willing to be there with you. When I was 5 or so, I was being babysat by my cousin. She was in her 20s, and we were in the backyard along with her toddler. And at the time, I was jealous because she was giving her toddler more attention than me, so I ended up hitting him with an electric toy truck. He was fine, but he was crying. Then she gave me a bath that was filled to the brim and up to my neck. I thought this was super strange, as I'd never had the water that high before. Then she left the room for a while, and it was a really long bath, and I had to ask if I can get out now. About 15 years later, I realized that she had intended for me to drown. So I hope you enjoyed those, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you didn't notice, I had a little bit of an audio issue at some points during the thing. I'm not quite sure what that was, but I'll try and fix it for next week. So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And if you want to, I have a PayPal that you can donate to, as well as a Patreon. So all that good stuff will be down in the description. And yeah, thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for always watching the videos, and I shall see you in the next one. Oh, and I kind of thought about next week's video being like a top 5 or a top 10 on like weird cryptids. I know that you guys probably all heard of them before, but for me, they're pretty new. So would you like to see a video like that? If so, let me know in the comments, or if you have any other suggestions about what you'd like to see a video on, then leave it down below. Anyways, for real this time, thank you for pulling up a stump, and I will see you in the next one.